Isa, come downstairs. Yeah. Can you get copies of one of them upstairs? You know, they have about 4 copies. The library. They should be in the library. I can probably put one in there. They're covered in one copies. Yeah. Yeah, because I do students who read this stuff and stuff. What are talking about? Yes. Oh, you do it? Yeah. You're gonna have to remember. Or do you just take the rotation? No. Which way you want it straight? Whatever. That's probably it. Yes. Yeah. This is a group. Yeah. Yeah, I'll just take that.
لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله الله محمد رسول الله مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم يا ربي صل على محمد وعلى سادتنا آله وصحبه الكرام ظلمت سنة من أحيا الظلم إلى أن اشتكت قدمه الضر من ورمي وشد من سغب أحشاءه وطوى تحت الحجارات كاشحا متراف الهدم مولاي صل وسلم دائما عبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم وراودته الجبال الشم من ذهب عن نفسه فأراها أيام الشمم وأكدت زهده فيها ضرورته إن الضرورة لا تعدو على العصام مولاي صل وسلم دائما عبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم وكيف تدعو إلى دنيا ضرورة من لولاه لم تخرج دنيا من العدم محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين والفريقين من عرب ومن عدم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم نبينا الأمير الناهي فلا أحد أبر في قولي لا منه ولا نعم هو الحبيب الذي ترجى شفاعته لكل هول من الأهوال مقتحم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم دعا إلى الله فالمستمسكون به مستمسكون بحبل غير منفصم فاق النبيين في خلق وفي خلق ولم يدانوه في علم ولا كرم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم وكلهم من رسول الله ملتمس غرفا من البحر أو رشفا من الديم وواقفون لديه عند حدهم من نقطات العلم أو من شكلات الحكم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم فهو الذي تم معناه وصورته ثم اصطفاه حبيبا بريء النسم منزه عن شريك في محاسنه فجوهر الحسن فيه غير منقسم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم دعما دعته النصارى في نبيه واحكم بما شئت مدحا فيه به واحتكمي وانسب إلى ذاته ما شئت من شرف وانسب إلى قدره ما شئت من عظام مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم فإن فضل رسول الله ليس له حد فيعرب عنه ناطق بفمه لولا سابت قدره آياته عظاما أحيا اسمه حين يدعى دارس الرمام مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم لم يمتحنا بما تعيا العقول به حرصا علينا فلم نرتم ولم نهي عيا الورى فهم معناه فليس يرى للقرب والبعد فيه غير منفهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما ابدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم كالشمس تظهر للعينين من بعد صغيرة وتكل الطرف من أمامي وكيف يدرك في الدنيا حقيقته قوم سلوا عنه بالحلم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم يا ربي صل على محمد وعلى سادتنا عليه وصحبه الكرام فمبلغ العلم فيه أنه بشر وأنه خير خلق الله كلهم وكل آية أتى الرسل الكرام بها فإنما تصالت من نوره به مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم فإنه شمس فضل هم كواكبها يظهرن أنوارها للناس في ظلام أكرم بخلق نبي زنه خلق بالحسن مشتمل بالبشر متسم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم كالزهر في تراف والبدر في شراف والبحر في كرام والدهر في همام كأنه وهو فرد في جلالته في عسكر حين تلقاه وفي حشم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم كأنما اللؤلؤ المكنون في صدف من معدن منطق منه ومبتسم لطيب يعدل تربا ثم علومه طوبى لمنتشق منه وملتزم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم يا ربي صل على محمد وعلى سادتنا عليه وصحبه الكرام مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم اللهم صل على المصطفى حبيبنا محمد عليه السلام اللهم صل على المصطفى حبيبنا محمد عليه السلام اللهم صل على المصطفى حبيبنا محمد عليه السلام. اللهم صل على المصطفى حبيبنا محمد عليه السلام. أنا عبد ربي له قدرة يهون بها كل أمر عسير، فإن كنت عبدا ضعيف القوى فربي على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على المصطفى حبيبنا محمد عليه السلام. اللهم صل على المصطفى حبيبنا محمد عليه السلام. اللهم صل على المصطفى. اللهم صل على المصطفى حبيبنا محمد عليه السلام. حبيبنا محمد عليه السلام. الله 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 الله، لا إله إلا الله. الله الله محمد رسول الله. محمد رسول الله.
يا عاشق المصطفى أبشر بنيل المنى قد رقاك الصفا وطاب وقت الهنا نور الجمال بدا من وجه شمس الهدى. من فضله عمان طه الذي باللقاء قد فاز لما سقى وفي ذرار اتقاء من ربه قادنا فهو حبيب الإله.
حبيب الإله حبيب الإله حبيب الإله حبيب الإله
فهو حبيب الإله.
حبيب الإله حبيب الإله حبيب الإله حبيب الإله
فهو حبيب الإله. حبيب الإله حبيب الإله حبيب الإله
حبيب الإله
حبيب الإله حبيب الإله حبيب الإله حبيب الإله وجهه بقربه قد حبى وخصه بالثناء دون الورى ربنا يا أجمل الأنبياء يا أكمل الأصفياء يا أجمل الأنبياء يا أكمل الأصفياء يا خاتم الرسل ما أحلاك في قلبي يا ذا الذي نسخة الأكوان فيك مطوية عطية أزلية يا ذا الذي نسخة الأكوان فيك مطوية عطية أزلية يا أجمل الأنبياء يا أكمل الأصفياء يا أجمل الأنبياء يا أكمل الأصفياء يا خاتم الرسل ما أحلاك في قلبي يا ذا الذي نسخة الأكوان فيك مطوية عطية أزلية يا ذا الذي نسخة الأكوان فيك مطوية عطية أزلية أنت الذي أعطيت الشفاعة الوافية والخلق حينئذ يلتمسون الأنبياء أنت الذي أعطيت الشفاعة الوافية والخلق حينئذ يلتمسون الأنبياء ثم يقال للأنام قد نلتم العمياء ألا قصيدوا محمدا بابا إله العالية آياته شافية بشرى لنا إلا المنى زال العنا وفالهنا بشرى لنا إلا المنى زال العنا وفالهنا والدهر أنجز وعده والبشر أضحى معلنا بشرى لنا إلا المنى زال العنا وفالهنا بشرى لنا إلا المنى زال العنا وفالهنا
يا نفس طيبي باللقاء يا عين قري أعينا
يا نفس طيبي باللقاء يا عين قري أعينا
هذا جمال المصطفى أنواره لاحت لنا
بشرى لنا للمنى زال العنا وفالهنا يا طيبة ماذا نقول وفيك قد حل الرسول. يا طيبة ماذا نقول؟ وفيك قد حل الرسول، وكلنا يرجو الوصول لمحمد نبينا. بشرى لنا نل المنى زال العنا فالهنا. بشرى لنا نل المنى زال العنا وفالهنا. والدهر أنجز وعده والبشر أضحى معلنا. بشرى لنا نل المنى زال العنا وفالهنا. بشرى لنا نل المنى زال العنا وفالهنا. يا إمام الرسل يا سندي أنت باب الله معتمدي. فبدنياي وآخرتي يا رسول الله خذ بيدي. أو إمامكم messages of Allah. On you I come to read Jannah. So in this life and the hereafter, guide me through the way and hold my hand. سيد السادات من مطري غوث أهل البدو والحضر. سيد السادات من مطري غوث أهل البدو والحضر. صاحب الآيات والسور منبع الأحكام والحكم. أو إمامكم messages of Allah. On you I come to read Jannah. So in this life and the hereafter, guide me through the way and hold my hand.
ما رأت عين وليس ترى
مثل طه في الورى بشرا.
ما رأت عين وليس ترى
مثل طه في الورى بشرا. ما رأت عين وليس تراه مثل طه في الورى بشرا. خير من فوق الثرى أثرى. طاهر الأخلاق والشيم. يا إمام الرسل يا سندي أنت باب الله معتمدي. فبدنياي وآخرتي يا رسول الله خذ بيدي. قمر سيدنا النبي قمر وجميل سيدنا النبي وجميل. قمر قمر سيدنا النبي قمر وجميل سيدنا النبي وجميل وكف المصطفى كالورد ينادي
الله الله
وعطرها يبقى إذا مست أيادي
الله الله
وكف المصطفى كالورد ينادي الله الله وعطرها يبقى إذا مست أيادي
الله الله
وعم نوالوها كل العباد وعم نوالوها كل العباد وعم نوالوها كل العباد حبيب الله يا خير البراء يا قمرون قمرون قمر سيدنا النبي قمرون وجميل 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 سيدنا النبي وجميل قمرون 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 قمر سيدنا النبي قمرون وجميل 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 سيدنا النبي وجميل ولا ذل له بل كان نورا
الله الله
تنال الشمس منه والبدورا
الله الله
ولا ذل له بل كان نورا
الله الله
تنال الشمس منه والبدورا
الله الله
ولم يكن الهدى لولا ظهورا ولم يكن الهدى لولا ظهورا ولم يكن الهدى لولا ظهورا وكل الكون من أنوار طه قمرون قمرون قمر سيدنا النبي قمر وجميل وجميل وجميل
وجميل سيدنا النبي
وجميل قمرون 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 قمر سيدنا النبي قمر اللهم صل على المصطفى حبيبنا محمد عليه السلام 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 اللهم صل على المصطفى حبيبنا محمد عليه السلام.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. That's fine, it's fine. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد خاتم النبيين وإمام المرسلين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، قال جل وعلا في كتاب مبين ولو أنهم إن ظلموا أنفسهم جاءوك فاستغفروا الله واستغفر لهم الرسول لوجدوا الله توابا رحيما. وقال الإمام al-Busayri في قصيدته المديح لولا الهوى لم ترق دمعا على طلل ولا أرقت لذكر الباني والعالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, today we're going to cover line 5 of the Burda. We're only going to do one line today, inshallah. It's a very, very important line because it not the theme, but Iltafata Busayri changes essentially the style of writing. The style that he adopts in the first 4 lines, he changes it slightly here and introduces, for instance, some alliteration in this line as well. Now, I want to talk about 2 or 3 concepts that Busayri covers here that are incredibly important. The reason it's only one line today is because one particular aspect of this line requires more than one lesson, probably 2 or 3 lessons. But we haven't got time to cover, to give 2 or 3 lessons to just one specific line. The translation of the line reads, لولا الهوى, if it were not, if not for love, your tears would not pour forth over the traces left by your beloved ala talalin, nor would you be sleepless remembering the willow tree and the mountain. I'm going to first break down the lines and then I'm going to give a commentary on both of them, inshallah, both of the hemi-stitches. This is one of the most important lines of this chapter, chapter 1. And for me anyway, one of the reasons is because he mentions something that I would say relates directly to us, directly relates to us. The previous lines had some aspects that only, for instance, Busayri could discuss or talk about considering the level of his love. But there's something here in this line that for us is very special, inshallah, that I want to talk about today. Now, he begins the line by, I'm going to explain some of the words, lawla al-hawa. He uses the word hawa. Now, hawa in the Arabic language has many different meanings. In modern Arabic, it's used for, it has a negative connotation in modern Arabic and classical Arabic to a degree. Hawa is different types. Kharputi, for instance, gives 3 types of it. I'm going to give all 3 to you, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, in Surah Al-Najm, says, وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى وَمَا يَنطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَى عَلَّمَهُ شَدِيدُ الْقُوَى. Allah states, وَمَا يَنطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى, that the messenger of God does not speak from hawa. Same word, hawa. But the meaning is not the same as this particular, in this particular context, it's not the same as it's in the Quran. The word hawa comes from 2 different forms in Arabic, either from hawa yahwi or hawa yahwa. The first of them, hawa yahwi, means to fall down, or even to pounce upon. And from that we have, for instance, hawa ala raqabatiha, a person fell into the arms of his beloved, to fall in. And the word hawiya in the Quran, you must be familiar with this word hawiya. Hawiya literally means the abyss, a complete black, like a big hole in the ground is hawiya. However, this type of hawa is not the same. The ulama, they state that this type of hawa is the first level of anybody's love, first level. And Imam Kharputi, he mentions 3 types. He says one type of hawa or love is to love something that God has forbidden. God has forbidden it, to love that. And he says this type of love, هذا الحب مذموم وهذا الهوى مذموم. This type of love is completely forbidden and it's distasteful and dispraised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not a valid type of love. And often you see now for instance, people in relationships that are, it's not to say that a person cannot be in a relationship that's not mun'aqid bin nikah, like he hasn't got his nikah done or she hasn't got her nikah done, and people cannot feel love for each other, but that's not often what we see. The kind of pretext for people's relationships are often physical, man. So very superficial and very sensual pretexts for people's relationships, where people essentially use the word love because they're physically attracted to each other. This is not the asal of love. So that would be madhmum, hawa. That would be a type of desire, hawa, that would be prevented and prohibited or dispraised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, and for the spiritual masters, something that will destroy the soul. Qarputi then states that the second type of hawa, maybe this type, is al-ishq, is true love. Last month, we covered, I think, 8 categories of love, 8 categories, I think, of love. And one of those categories was ishq. It's not the highest category, but it is one of the categories of love. We covered all the different types of love, according to Tahir bin Ashur, in his commentary of the Burda. The third, he states, is sometimes when the scholars use this word hawa, yadullu ila al-mahbub, it means the one who is beloved to them. And if you look at the line, it makes sense here. Lawla al-hawa, if it were not for the beloved. So the line still makes sense. So either we translate it as if it were not for love, or if it were not for the beloved. Both of them make perfect sense. So essentially, Busayri is not using hawa here as the common usage of the word hawa. In Arabic, when we talk about ahlul hawa, the people of hawa, it's very bad. It means people who are of caprice and their own desires and overcome by their own desires for the dunya or something else. Then he states, lam turiq, araka yuriku in Arabic means to pour forth sabbahu. Here it specifically means that to cry to such a degree that your tears are flooding, essentially. There's a downpour of tears. Lam turiq, zam'an ala talal. And this word especially is the one that I want to concentrate on today. Talal. Now we've translated it here as Aziza translated it, Hafidh Ta'ala. If not for love, your tears would not pour forth over traces left by the beloved. And this is my main theme today. This one word that I want to comment on today for the next hour and something will be just on this one word, which is talal. The word talal, its plural is atlal, is a very special word for pre-Islamic poets and for lovers in the in Arabic poetry. This word talal. Bear in mind that the Arabs don't write books of literature. Their entire history is based on their poetry. The most famous Arabic poems, they're known as al-Mu'allaqat al-Sab'a. The 7 suspended poems were hung on the Kaaba. And if you read that poetry, it's very, very eloquent, and it's full of love stories and stories about horses and stories about their tribes and how strong they are and the rest of it. But this word to them, all these famous Arab poets, is what talal is very, very important. Now what talal in Arabic, it means essentially something that's built up from the ground, the word talal. But in this context, الشيء مرتفع, they say in Arabic, something that's built up on the floor and you can see. And often they would have in their courtyards, they would have an area that they sat on, the family to relax in their courtyard. That's called talal also. But this type of talal is very special. This type of talal, as Imam Bajuri says, ما بقي من آثار الدار مرتفعا. If you take a house and if it's a very old house, maybe 300-400 years old, and you go to visit it, all you'll see is certain walls are remaining, certain parts of the house, certain seating that was there maybe made out of stone remains. Essentially, that's what talal means. Talal is the remains of somebody's house. The remains of somebody's house. And specifically the nomadic Arabs, when they traveled or where they lived, wasn't very specific. They lived wherever there was water. Wherever there was water, the Arabs would live there. So as an example, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is from, if you memorize the lineage of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he himself commented himself up to Adnan, to his forefather Adnan. After Adnan, there is no sound report after that, even though some of the Sirah books take it all the way to Sayyidina Adam. But between Sayyidina Adnan and Sayyidina Adam, we don't know the lineage. There are only very weak or borderline fabricated reports from that. But up to Adnan, we know. Up to Adnan, we know. Now, also, we know definitely and definitively via the Quran that the Prophet ﷺ is from the lineage of Ismail. Ismail is the son of Ibrahim alayhi salam. What's important here is that Ismail alayhi salam is not an Arab. He is not an Arab. His father is not an Arab, and they were prophets sent to a different nation. Now, however, if he's not an Arab, then how is the Messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam an Arab? Then wouldn't he be from the lineage, being from the lineage of Ismail, be also labeled or titled rather a prophet, not of the Arabs but rather of the area that Sayyidina Ibrahim was sent to? No, because when his mother, Sayyidina Ismail's mother, was left in Mecca at that time, called Mecca, or in Mecca, by Sayyidina Ibrahim. And it's very important because some of the books state that Sayyidina Ibrahim would use the Buraq to travel from Baytul Maqdis to Mecca to see his wife, would use the Buraq. And when she was there, and we know the story of Safa and Marwa, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her water that came forth from the ground. Once water was seen by the nomadic Arabs that had traveled from Yemen specifically, the tribe that had traveled from Yemen at that time, they were known as Bani Qahtan. Bani Qahtan traveled from Yemen. Real pure Arabs are Yemeni. If they're Yemenis, they probably like that. Is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, al-Islam, the Islam is Yemeni and Iman is Yemeni. Allahumma barik lana fi Shamina wa Yemenina. Allah put blessing in Sham and in Yemen. Yemen is a very, very special place historically. Thamud were in Yemen as well. Hadramaut is a very special place for old prophets. Now, so the pure-blooded Arabs are Yemeni Arabs. For instance, Egyptians are not Arabs. Egyptians are Africans. That part of Masr, for instance, and Maghreb and Algeria, all of these places, they weren't considered the core Arabian Peninsula whatsoever. Iraq, for instance, was Babylon, Mesopotamia. Before that, Persia, Faris. The real Arabs traveled from Yemen, Bani Qahtan. They settled when they saw water in Mecca. They saw water, they settled. From them came a tribe known as Bani Jurham. Bani Jurham then lived, or saying that Ismail grew up with them, married into their families. And from that chain or lineage comes the Prophet ﷺ. So what's important here is that is the point that they lived in places that had water. When the water ran out, they would move. They would move to another place. And what would remain is some signs that people had been here. You'd have a bit of a tent, some old wood maybe that's deteriorated, where you can definitively or definitely see that somebody lived here. If you've read The Alchemist, I can't remember the author, the Brazilian author. In that, when he goes back and he can't find her, he finds some remnants of her tent or where she was before. That's talal, essentially. That's talal. Now the question is, what does Busayri here mean by talal? Busayri mean here by talal? That I'll comment on after I finish commenting on the rest of the line, and the next segment of the lesson will only be on talal. I want to finish the line before that. So we just have here traces left by your beloved. So after I finish explaining the line, then I'll give the full commentary, inshallah. Then he says, وَلَا أَرِقْتَ لِذِكْرِ الْبَانِ وَالْعَلَمِ. Nor would you be sleepless remembering. Now the word أَرِقَ يَرَقُ or يَعْرَقُ أَفْوَانِ. أَرِقَ يَعْرَقُ means to be sleepless. Now, to have insomnia, sahran, they say in Arabic, to be an insomniac. But what's really, really important is that وَلَا أَرِقْتَ, you would not, he states, nor would you be sleepless remembering the willow tree. And what's really important about lovers is sleep. the lover, if anybody claims love and they can go to sleep at night, there's something seriously wrong with them. The poet states, he says, عجبا للمحب كيف ينام كل نوم على المحب حرام. The poet states how bizarre it is for the lover how he falls asleep. For every sleep for the lover is haram. So so a real person who loves, like Bilal, we're saying that Bilal fell asleep. Only when he fell asleep did the Prophet ﷺ come to him, and he wasn't in the state of sleep. You could say he was in a state of celestial purity when he saw the Prophet ﷺ night after night after night. And the Prophet ﷺ constantly would say to him that, why have you left us, O Bilal? And then eventually he went back to Medina al-Munawwara. Even the sleep for these people of Salihin is of great rank. The Prophet ﷺ, for instance, never slept like we sleep, for instance. We don't sleep like the messengers. Say that Aisha radiallahu anha in Sahih Bukhari asked the messenger, do you make wudu for the water? In the evening, the odd number, the water prayer, or the witr prayer, however you want to pronounce it. She said, do you make wudu? And he said to her, and the hadith is incredible because he replies to her with like ajaban, like very surprised that she asked him the question. And he said, do you not know that when I sleep, my eyes close but my heart remains awake? And in the hadith, Ibn Hajar quotes about when they open they remove the heart of the Prophet ﷺ. In one narration, qalbun lahu aynan yanzuran, he saw that in his heart there were two eyes that could see independent of the body, and two ears that could hear. Ibn Hajar mentions, which is an incredible point, because people often will say that the Messenger of Allah is not aware after he leaves this world in the way that he was here with the Sahaba. But he said himself that sleep is the younger sibling of death. Well, if he is younger sibling, so the older sibling is even more extreme. So if the Messenger of God, when he sleeps, is aware of everything, then what would he be when he's left this world? You know, al-qiyas yani. So the analogy is striking because not understanding the almost ability of the Prophet ﷺ. And at this point, I want to mention something very important about him. The Messenger of God has mu'jizat, miracles. The essence of a miracle, the essential of a miracle, is the fact that when there's tahaddi, a challenge from the kuffar, or Nimrud, or Abu Jahl, or Abu Lahab, the messenger brings, or the messengers in the story of Nimrud, Ibrahim alayhi salam, brings a miracle, you know, mu'jiza. And the word mu'jiza in Arabic comes from the verb a'jiza, yu'jizu, i'jaz. It literally means to disable somebody. Mu'jiza, it disables the opponent. The opponent can't reply. So the Messenger of God brought many miracles, mu'jizat. However, there were some miracles that seemed so consistent that would you label it really a miracle? And people get confused as to what that is. The fact of the matter is that the very body of the Prophet ﷺ is mu'jiza. The very body of the Messenger of God is a mu'jiza. The way his body reacts to certain things, it's completely, utterly miraculous. For instance, it would only be a miracle, as we understand a miracle to be, if he touched a child on the head, and that child, when it grew old, never had any white hair, if it were just one child. When it's every single child, you would have to infer that his body is very innate, intrinsic, essential qualities of his body are miraculous, that and consistent, that his body behaves like that in every single instance and occasion. They say that the Messenger of God, alayhi salatu, they would know where he is simply by following the scent through the alleyways and then arriving at the station of where he would be standing. That isn't a miracle as we understand it. That is just the absolute essential nature of his body, which is miraculous. So this is very important. It's not like prophets. The miracles only occur at a challenge. Some elements of the prophets, almost all elements of the prophets, in fact, every element of the prophets is completely, utterly miraculous and indifferent from every other human being. Muhammadun basharun wa laysa kal bashari fa innahu yaqutatun wa nasu kal hajari wa huwa yaqutatun. Muhammad is a bashar, a man, but not like any man. He is a pearl when men are like regular stones. So, as the poet states. So, this is very important. Now, وَلَا عَرِقْتَ لِذِكْرِ الْبَانِ وَالْعَلَمِ. So the Sahaba their states of sleep, my point was, were great states of sleep. And there were states where Abdullah ibn Umar, for instance, because we kind of forget or to recognize the state of the Sahaba after the Prophet ﷺ. I want to talk about this later, but I'll bring it in here because it's to do with wala araqta. They say his son, I can't remember the exact chain of narration, but they say about Abdullah bin Umar that whenever ever the name of the Messenger of God would be mentioned, they say Abdullah ibn Umar would completely and utterly break down. Abdullah bin Umar would completely break down. They said we would see him whenever he would walk past anything attached to the Messenger of God, he would just break down into tears. وَيَبْكِي, every single time. And they said at the end of his life, we could almost sense him wishing for God to take him, that he had nothing left in this world to live for, and he was almost pleading with God that God remove him from this world so he can meet the Prophet. So his state was, he was so overcome with emotion, Abdullah bin Umar. They say when he was with the Prophet, remember Abdullah bin Umar was very young, and he would follow the Messenger of God everywhere, almost like the Messenger would be walking and from a distance he'd be hiding, and he would look and document every single place that the Messenger of God prays in. Abdullah bin Umar documented them. So if he prayed in somebody's house, he would document it. If he prayed in this place, he would document it. And they said after the Messenger of God, Abdullah bin Umar, you would see him only in these places. He would be praying in exactly the places that he had documented. He would go to people's houses and he would ask them, did the Messenger of God pray here? He said, yes. Said, where did he pray? He said, immediately he would go to that place. He was so overcome by the remnants of the Messenger of God, that he would look for it in every single place. So their sleep is very, very different. And Busayri says, وَلَا أَرِقْتَ لِذِكْرِ الْبَانِ, and you would not have been, or nor would you be sleepless in remembering al-ban. Al-ban and alam are two very, very important words. Now, and then I'm going to return to Insha Allah. Now, here we've translated, or Aziz has translated Al-Ban as willow tree and Al-Alam as mountain, which is, very accurate. The word Al-Ban is a particular tree. Now, Kharputi states, because we've already had a tree in Dhusalam, what tree is it really? He states it's a specific tree outside of Mecca that the Prophet ﷺ would lean on, and he would advise the Sahaba. So he would lean on this particular tree for the specific purpose of giving advice, or rather talking to the Sahaba, advising them and giving them prophetic pearls. As for the mountain, it's much more difficult. Well, which mountain is it going to be? I have not found any riwayah specifically that knows what mountain this is. Kharputi states it's Hira, it's Thawr. It's any mountain that the Prophet ﷺ went to. I think it's any mountain that the Prophet ﷺ went to. And the specific quality of a mountain essentially is that when the Messenger of God enters that mountain, the light permeates from that mountain for travelers so they could see the correct direction for their journey. That's what the Messenger of God does. Because on the night of Iqra, for instance, a very important night, imagine the state of the mountain on that night, because there was light permeating into the heavens from the mountain on the night of Iqra. And that whole meeting of Jibreel with the Prophet ﷺ, where he saw him in his true form, and then he saw him again in the heavens, وَرَآهُ نَزْلَةً أُخْرَى عِنْدَ سِدْرَةِ الْمُنْتَهَى, and he saw him again at Sidratul Muntaha in his pure form, was a meeting of many, many prophetic secrets. Why would you tell somebody to read, and then when he doesn't read, ask him again, and then ask him again, and then just let him go? It's incredible, the secrets that were the secrets of that particular event. It's not an event story today, so inshallah later time I'll discuss that particular point. Now I want to concentrate on this particular word talab for the rest of, we've got an hour here. Hopefully it's enough. Now, talal here, going back to talal, is the most important word in my opinion in this section, in this line. But what is talal? And what does talal mean essentially? Now, I'm going to give Kharputi's position first, and then I'm going to give my own tafsirah. Imam Kharputi states that this word talal can mean Makkah Mukarrama. It can mean Makkah Mukarrama, talal. This particular word talal. Now, how does that make any sense? Huh? Because Makkah al-Mukarrama has buildings that are tall. It has buildings that it has the birth house of the Prophet ﷺ still there. That's not really talal. It's not talal because talal is something that's essentially due to time, only parts of it remains. And so how is that talal? He states, it's a beautiful point that Kharputi made. He states that when the Prophet ﷺ left Makkah al-Mukarrama after the Quraysh forced him out, remember when he stood at the border of Makkah and he spoke to Makkah and he said, "Oh Makkah," he said, "I love you, and if it were not for them removing me from Makkah, forcing me out," he said, "I would never have left you," because it was the place he was born. Anyway, it was a very emotional event for the Prophet ﷺ when he left Makkah. Now, he states that when he left Makkah, there was the word that he uses specifically, Kharputi, khirba, I think he uses. He states that Makkah was spoilt when the Prophet ﷺ left. He said when they removed the Prophet ﷺ from Makkah essentially lost, he states, that great essence that made it special. And the proof that he gives is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Quran, وَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِهَذَا الْبَلَدِ وَأَنْتَ حِلٌّ بِهَذَا الْبَلَدِ. I swear by that place, that city. And then Allah says, وَأَنْتَ حِلٌّ بِهَذَا الْبَلَدِ. It's because you exist in that very place in Makkah al-Mukarramah. And he states it was only special because of the Prophet ﷺ. Only special because of the Messenger of God. People say, what about the Kaaba? The Kaaba is a building made out of stone. It's a direction, qibla. It's a qibla. Anybody who thinks that the Kaaba is more special or important than the Prophet ﷺ doesn't understand anything about our theology or the seerah. The Kaaba is stone. An Abyssinian man comes and destroys it brick by brick and takes the treasure. There's a treasure buried under the Kaaba and the signs of the Day of Judgment. An Abyssinian man, and the Prophet ﷺ said his legs are very skinny, comes and he destroys it to steal the treasure. I don't know if it's Obama. Just wait and see. Abdullah's dead now, so that happens. Huh? So the Kaaba is a building. Huh? It's a direction, a qibla. The stone has no importance. And Sayyidina Umar, unbelievably, Sayyidina Umar, when he reached the black stone, he said, "By God, if it were not for the Messenger of God kissing you, I'd never have kissed you. You have no importance to me." It's a stone at the end of, but the Messenger of God is to God important enough to take an oath by, because, or rather, the city that he resides in. So he states it's Makkah because they spoilt the city, they spoilt it, and then he goes on to talk about something very important. He states even though they spoilt it, it still has talal. It has talal. It has remnants of the Messenger of God, and then he states that the remnants is any sand or any earth that touches the feet of the Messenger of God. He said that is talal. And what's very beautiful is that Ibn Hajar Asqalani states that Baytul Maqdis was chosen for the night of Mi'raj. Why? He said so the feet of the Messenger of God could touch the ground, so that on the day of judgment people could have mercy from God on that place, on that plane, because that's where the day of judgment starts, in Baytul Maqdis. That people would have the mercy of God because the feet of the Prophet ﷺ have touched that ground. So it's very, very important to know that wherever his feet have touched, which I'm going to comment on, that place is a very, very blessed place. Imam Malik radiallahu anh, his stories are incredible, but I mean, the ones that I want to talk about, when the leader, he whipped Imam Malik in Medina al-Munawwara, because Imam Malik wouldn't give a ruling in his favor. But what's incredible is After he tortured Malik radiallahu anh, Imam Malik was tortured, Imam Dar al-Hijra. Imam Malik sent one of his students to him and said, tell him that I forgive him for it. Shaykh Muhammad al-Qattani mentions, does anybody know why he forgave him for it? Anybody here know? He forgave him only for one reason. He forgave him because he was from the family of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, by God, I do not want to meet the Messenger of God and be responsible for one of his progeny being punished for Malik's sake. So he forgave him because he was al-Bayt. That's the only reason he forgave him. Which is incredible, the love that he had, that to be beaten and to be strapped to a donkey and be beaten through Medina by a man, that you would forgive him because he's from the family of the Prophet ﷺ. So you can see his incredible love for the Messenger of God. He wouldn't ride an animal in Medina. He wouldn't wear slippers or sandals in Medina. And he wouldn't let anybody raise their voice in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. Which is, Imam Malik is one of the greatest lovers. He said, I didn't go to sleep except all his life, except that I saw the Messenger of God in my dream every night of my life. Imam Malik, when he was younger, was it Imam Malik? Yeah, I think Imam Malik or Shafi'i. I think Imam Malik wanted to be a singer. He wanted to sing, not singer like we have now. And he was then pushed into the line of, and his mother sent him out very young. He was a very young boy. And Imam Malik said that I studied with 6,000 teachers. 6,000 teachers Malik had, which is incredible. And he memorized over 1 million hadith. But overwhelmingly, he was completely overcome by the love of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, so he says Talal is Mecca. Now, what I want to talk about is my tafsir on Talal. I believe that the word Talal here refers to any single thing that is connected to the Prophet ﷺ, and that's what I want to talk about. Anything connected to the Messenger of God. Anything. A relic, for instance, or relics is kind of my topic that I want to talk about today. And people taking tabarruk, taking blessings from the Messenger of Allah, and I'll give you my, I'll mention why. A day and age where people are so obsessed with mobile phones, and they love them, they buy them, they unwrap them, they cover them in invisible shields and cases just in case they may crack, coveting these mobile devices for them only 9 months later to buy, the new arrival and throw the other away. Look how we protect dunya. Look how we protect dunya. How we love it and we protect it and we shield it. But yeah, people don't do that with the Messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam. Allahu ya'asimuka minan nas. God will protect you from the people. And because of that relationship being lost, we don't enshroud the Messenger of God in these great clothes of heavenly garments of praise. Because of that, we're more concerned with kind of material goods. And people you may deny, but we have more almost spontaneous love for the dunya than we do with the Messenger of God. The excitement that people feel when a new device comes out is not the excitement they feel when they hear the name of the Prophet ﷺ. It's not. It's just absolute reality. Imam Ja'far Sadiq, they say that when they saw him, he was uncontrollably overcome by a state that he would weep until they would just leave him alone, weeping, when the Messenger of God was mentioned. I talked about Abdullah bin Umar. This is not just one or two of them, even though Imam Ja'far Sadiq is the great-great-grandson of the Prophet ﷺ. This was all of the Sahaba. Their state was absolutely this. Saying that Abu Bakr would be found in the evening saying, Ya Shawqah. He would be almost beseeching the Messenger of God in the nighttime, wouldn't be able to sleep in the evening. He only lived for 3 years after the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr Siddiq. Only for 3 years. So the thought is almost as if they were pleading with God that the qadr be that they only have a few days left. So the Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, the youngest daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, the greatest woman that God ever created alayhi salam, was 6 months after she left this world as a promise from her father. she was, if you want to know love, if you want to, there are very few riwayat. If you want to know people who love the Messenger of God, if you look at his daughter, say the Fatima to Zahra alayhi salam, I've not found anybody that shows that over, you know, it was almost to her, it would make her ill. And the Messenger of God, it was reciprocated. It was his favorite daughter. He loved her the most. You know, there's a narration, a beautiful narration where when Ruqayya passed away, Ruqayya is the older and she passed away. She was the first wife of Sayyidina Uthman from the two daughters. Then the Prophet Kulthum to him. And she passed away, and say that she was the closest to say the Fatima to Zahra. And she was weeping, and she was weeping and weeping, and the Prophet was weeping with her. And Sayyidina Umar had already told people not to weep after, and this was after Badr. After the Badr had taken place, people are weeping for the martyrs of Badr. And he said, why are you weeping? And the Messenger of God told us not to. And then when he met the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, the Prophet said, he said, as for this, he said, and this, he said, there's nothing. The heart and the eyes. He said, as for this and this, he said, that's sinful. Meaning, as for screaming and beating your chest, no. But as for this and this, he said, is a mercy from God. Is a mercy from God. And she's in that hadith. She's in very few hadith. One of the other great hadith that she's in is as one who aids the Messenger of God against the Quraysh as a little girl, very, very young girl. And the hadith is incredible because if you want to see, which nobody should ever, of course, but the kuffar, they do things. If people want to find the displeasure of the Messenger of God, they'll find it in upsetting his family, especially his daughter, alayhi salam. When they threw the carcass on him and she came running very young, she was weeping, crying, and she cleaned. Literally, she was cleaning the clothes of the Messenger of God, and then she took him into the house. The Prophet ﷺ cursed them for it. You read Sirah, he never curses anybody by name, except at that moment. Every single one of those people died. Which shows you the great importance of, say, the Fatima to Zahra alayhi salam, and in connection to the Messenger of God, that on the Day of Judgment she crosses the bridge and all the angels lower their heads in front of her. I mean, this is an incredible amount of love, because when he was passing away, she was with him, and I said in another, maybe even in the last lesson, I said, God took away, qadr al-maqdura, all of his daughters died. All of his daughters, his wife, said the Khadija al-Kubra died, passed away. His uncle Hamza was killed. Abu Talib died. All of these great, great people and the people that the Prophet loved passed away, except Fatima to Zahra alayhi salam, which is very odd. Because why did Allah, it was almost a gift and a mercy to the Prophet that he did not have to see Fatima to Zahra leave this world. It was as if it were a gift to him. And it shows his closeness to her. And she's one of the greatest ones who loved the Messenger of God alayhi salatu. And I'll mention some of the others as well. Now, so these are the people that we're going to talk about. Now, so in this day and age, when people talk about love, and what is really I don't know, these last 2 months has irritated me, is constantly people, wallahi, if the internet could be blown up tomorrow, and people will arrest me for this probably. I don't mean literally. I mean, if it could disappear for good reason, it would be the best thing, because the Prophet ﷺ said that close to the Day of Judgment, he said, God will take the people of knowledge, ulama. This means people in knowledge of God, and they'll be replaced by ignoramuses who will speak and not know what they're saying. They'll be misguided, and they will misguide other people. People say, oh, you know, loving the Messenger of God is following the Messenger of God. I've got one question for you. When Sayyidina Umar went to the Prophet ﷺ, he sat in front of him. He said, Ya Rasulullah. He said, Ya Rasulullah, Inni la uhibbuk. He said, by God, I love you. I love you more than anything except this here, he said. The Prophet ﷺ said to him, Ya Umar, that's not sufficient, until you love me more than that. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I love you. Inni la uhibbuka. And then he said, more than this. Then. He said, now, you're complete. I want to ask one question. Between him saying he loves the messenger of God more than everybody except this, and him saying he loves the messenger of God more than everything, what following did he do? Tell me. What sunnah did he follow? He did nothing. It was the state of his heart changed momentarily. And that state of heart changing shows you that ittiba is, we talked about it, you have to follow the messenger of God, not because he told you to follow him. It's because of the overwhelming love that you have. The consequence of that for everybody would be that you follow him. You see, and this is very, very important. You can follow somebody out of force, out of compulsion. You know, you go to work, you have to do loads of things. Right? They tell you do this, do that. You can follow people out of dunya. And these people who talk like this, they follow the messenger of God, and this is all tijara for them, all dunya for them. They've sold their deen li thamanin qalila, for a very, very small pittance. Because true love of the messenger Allah permeates all of these things. It's what Bilal, was it that Bilal prayed 4 nafil extra and he saw the messenger of God? No, he couldn't go to sleep. These people say that Abu Bakr, the Prophet ﷺ said, it's not because Abu Bakr prays more than you or he fasts more than you. It's because God has put a secret in his heart that nobody else has. And that's the love for me. I mean, that's not denying practice. Practice or denying practice is the way of the Jabariya, a particular deviant group from before. And some Muslims, unfortunately, have fallen into that. But loving the messenger of God is completely internal. What practice are you going to do? What are you going to do in Jannah? Jannah, the love of the messenger of Allah, is something that has to be there before you go in. There's no salah in Jannah. No salah in Jannah. It's just in the suhbah of the messenger of God. Somebody asked me once, what people get bored in Jannah? When they get bored in Jannah. And I said to them, you know Adam alayhi salam. Adam alayhi salam, Allah put him in Jannah and gave him every bit of dunya. Dunya, I mean by here, not dunya as we know, but material goods, material beauties. The fruits of Jannah, the palaces of Jannah. أعطاه كل شيء. He gave him everything. And then he went back to Allah after some time. Ya Allah, I'm not content here. This doesn't fulfill what you've created in me. And can't you? He said, Allah, create for me somebody that I can share this with. And God created for Sayyidina Adam Hawa. Why did he create Hawa for him? It shows you that material serves no purpose to people's achieving peace. Material. Nothing. Al-Jannah is not Al-Jannah because there's palaces. These people say, you know, we're going to go fight jihad because we're going to get Hurul Ain. Do you think Sahaba said that? Do you think Sahaba said that? You know, Hanzala. Let's talk about Hanzala. Hanzala on the day of Uhud. Hanzala, they say, Hanzala married a woman that was of extreme beauty. Extreme beauty. And Hanzala was not one of those Sahaba that was famous for being the most handsome of the Sahaba. Very important how we talk about Sahaba. And he married her. And then on his wedding night, when after consummating the marriage, she had a dream. And in her dream, she saw Hanzala at the gates of Jannah. And she told him, and he knew that he would be martyred. So she held him and didn't let him go. And Hanzala left the house without making ghusl. And he fought in the battle and he died. And when he passed away, the Messenger of Allah looked up and he smiled and he said, the angels give ghusl to Hanzala. Do you think Hanzala fought and died because he wanted Hurul Ain? There was a young boy, 15 years old in Badr, and he had some dates in his hand and he was getting ready. And he looked up, he said, Ya Rasulullah, what is it that is between me and Al-Jannah? What's between me and Jannah? Is it just these people over here? He said, yes. They say he put the dates down, unsheathed his sword and ran into the enemy and was martyred. These people didn't have that. They wanted a sohbah after the Prophet ﷺ asked one of the Sahaba, he said, what do you want? If you want anything, I'll give you whatever you want. And this was in the hand of the Messenger, فَإِنَّهُ قَاسِمٌ. He hands it out. He said, what do you want? He said, Ya Rasul, let me think about it. Because it's not an easy choice to make. The Prophet ﷺ says to you, what would you like? What would you say it? If he came to you and said, if anything you want, what would you want? So he said, give me 3 days. 3 days, I'll be back in 3 days, enough time to think about it. And he returns to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, what I would wish is to be with you, suhbatuk, to be with you in Al-Jannah. If people think they're going to get bored in Al-Jannah, then they've completely misinterpreted it. Jannah is about the Messenger of God, alayhi salam, and nothing else. It's to be with the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam. We'll do plenty of ihtifalat there. Mawlids will be every day there. You know, they say about Al-Jannah, Mullah al-Qari states that in Al-Jannah, Allah doesn't unveil himself to the people at the beginning. And they spend many years in Al-Jannah, maybe hundreds of years, Allah knows best. And then one day there's a herald that calls one of the angels, and he says, "O people, gather in a place." And they gather, and Allah unveils himself to the people. And they say, "Oh Allah, if you had shown this to us before, we would have not wanted anything in Al-Jannah." And they say that a vision, they are granted that on an Eid every year, every few years. And ila rabbihim nadhira. So this is the Suhbah of the Messenger of Allah. And I'm going to go into some of the Sahaba now that love the Prophet ﷺ through his athar, talal. The first of them I want to talk about is Sawad ibn Aziyah. Now this Sahabi, you know the story, but I'm going to give two narrations for it. And then inshallah. This Sahabi, I should have introduced it with something else, but okay, is a Sahabi who on the day of Badr, the Prophet ﷺ straightens the Safuf. You've heard it before, but I'll give you two different narrations for it. One that you may not know. And the Prophet ﷺ takes a stick and he pushes him back. And he says, Ya Rasulullah, he said, Darabtani, you've hurt me. And the Prophet ﷺ takes the stick, puts it in his hand, and he says, and the Ansar look at him, and they say, Rasulullah, are you serious? The Messenger of God, are you serious? And he just says, hold on one second. And in one narration, he asks the Messenger of God to remove his shirt. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I've got no shirt on. Remove your shirt. Only fair. So the Prophet removes his shirt. Now, the famous narration that we know, he hugs him. That's not the strongest narration. The strongest narration is he kisses the stomach of the Prophet Qabbala batanahu. He kisses the stomach of the Prophet ﷺ. And in one narration he states that I kissed it, so on the day of judgment this would be an intercessor for me touching the body of the Messenger of God. That's the reason that I kissed it. And this is talal. This is to take the barakah from the Messenger of God directly. You know, in Hudaybiyah or pre-Hudaybiyah, Urwa ibn Mas'ud al-Thaqafi, and he's a very important person. He is the leader of Ta'if. And in Hudaybiyah, he goes to the Messenger of God. Bear in mind that people say that we lost Uhud. Even though the Muslims were overcoming Uhud, they still chased the Quraysh out. A lot of people don't know. And the Quraysh didn't feel it was a proper victory. And when they returned, Abu Lahab was dead, died of some nasty disease. After which, sometime after Hudaybiyah the treaty is made, they sent Urwa ibn Mas'ud al-Thaqafi, they sent him to the Messenger of God. And his story is incredible. He arrives at the Messenger of God, he says, I want to talk to him. He goes, next to the Prophet is a man whose face you can see, and a man whose face is covered with a helmet. You can't see his face. He comes in and he says, look, you need to make a deal with them. Which person leaves his own people? And then he infers to the Prophet, he said, do you really think that these people will be here for you? Immediately Abu Bakr goes and grabs him. Says, do you think we're going to leave the Messenger of God? Do you know who we are? And he looks at the Prophet and said, who is he? He said, well, he's Abu Bakr. And he said, do you really? And he said, if it were not for a favor that I owe you, or something you did for me, I would kill you. For even uttering such a thing. So as he's talking to the Prophet, he goes over to take the Messenger of God's beard. The man with the helmet takes the end of his sword and smashes his hand. And he removes his hand. He puts it again and he hits his hand again. He puts it again to hold just the beard. He hits him again. And he looks at the Messenger of God and said, who is this man? He removes his helmet and he's Mughira ibn Shu'bah, his own nephew. The nephew of Urwa. And he looks at him and he said, you're treacherous. Because when Mughira ibn Shu'bah left Taif, when he left, he was with a group of people. He killed them, took their stuff, and went to Medina and converted. He wasn't a Muslim then. And when he walked into Medina, the Prophet ﷺ looked at him and he became a Muslim. He put the stuff that he had, he said, take your things back. He said, I don't take things that have been stolen out of treachery. He goes, keep your stuff, but we take your shahada. And he struck him and he looked up at him and he was his own nephew in guarding the Messenger of God. And these are people of Taif who stoned the Prophet ﷺ on that day. Look how it comes around now. Urwa left. He went back to the Quraysh. And this is what he said to them. It's a long narration, but I'll mention something. He said, he went back to them as well. لذلك لما أرسلت قريش لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في صلح حديبية رسولهم عروة بن مسعود ثقفية سيد أهل الطائف. He said, ورأى عروة ما يصنع الصحابة رضوان الله عليهم مع رسول الله. He said, Urwa saw how they were around the Messenger of God. And what did he say? He said, Wallahi ya ma'shar Quraysh. He said, by God, O Quraysh. He said, Ji'tu Kisra fi mulkihi. He said, I've been to Khosrow in Persia. He said, Wa Qaysar fi azamatih. He said, and I've been to Qaysar, the leader of Rome. He said, Wa ma ra'aytu malikan fi qawmihi mithla Muhammadin fi ashabihi. He said, I have never seen a king to his people like the Messenger of God to his companions. He said, لَقَدْ رَأَيْتُ قَوْمًا لَا يُسْلِمُونَهُ لِشَيْءٍ أَبَدًا فَانظُرُوا رَأْيَكُمْ فَإِنْ أَرَدَ عَلَيْكُمْ رُشْدًا فَاقْبَلُوا مَا أَرَدَ عَلَيْكُمْ فَإِنِّي لَكُمْ نَاصِحٌ مَا أَنِّي أَخَافُ أَلَّا تُنْصَرُوا عَلَيْهِ. The longer hadith states that he said to them, I saw them fighting when he made wudu over catching the water in their mouth. I saw them fighting over it. He said, I saw them fighting over when, he said, by God, he said when he would spit, I don't want to use the word, but when he did, he said before it touched the floor, they would catch it in them. Who does that? Huh? He said they would not let his saliva touch the floor. These are Abu Bakr, these great people. Nobody taught. They would not let his saliva touch the floor. They would drink the saliva of the Messenger of God. He said when he would point to something, they would run to get it. He said, but they would never speak such that it was audible in his presence. And when he looked at them, none of them would look at his face. In fact, one Sahabi, they asked him, they said, what did the Messenger of God look like? He said, by God, I cannot describe him. They said, why can't you describe him? He said, I have never seen his face. He said, how can you not have seen the face of the Messenger of God? He said, every time I looked at him, I was overcome by the jah, literally the awe of the Messenger of God, and I put my head down, and I never looked directly at his face to describe him to you. This is how they would vie over the saliva of the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu. And he said to them, he said, by God, whatever he offers, you take it. Whatever, because I feel you will never be aided against this man. Now, this is a serious state of these people in their relationship to the Messenger of God. Who now talks about the Messenger of God like that? They talk as he's some kind of arbitrary character in history in the khutbahs that has come to tell you to believe in God. To believe in God. You know, one of the Sahaba caught an arrow in his neck here, when he jumped in front of the face of the Prophet ﷺ in Uhud. I'm going to talk about other Sahaba as well, but in Uhud, when the archers came down, some of them stayed. A lot of people don't talk about the archers that stayed. They obeyed the command of and they were killed. They obeyed the command of the man and they stayed. when they came down and the Quraysh then advanced, they made a ring around the Prophet ﷺ, a ring, a tight ring around the Messenger of God. In the middle was the Prophet ﷺ with Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr did not leave his side. Talha had been injured. He was the only living martyr of Quraysh, they call him. Living martyr of Quraysh. And he took every wound in his body. He carried the Prophet ﷺ with 2 chainmails upon Uhud, on his back. And they penetrated and they struck the Messenger of God in his face. His helmet went into his cheekbone and part of it went into his tooth. Now, if you look at the Sahaba, you know, if you're fighting in a battle, you look at what's ahead of you. Every single Sahabi looked into the middle, to the Messenger of God. When they saw him struck, the best of creation, Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah ran. He literally broke the line and he ran. And as the blood came down, he caught it in his mouth. And then he took his teeth and he removed the helmet with his front teeth. And it broke all of his front teeth. Abu Ubaidah lost all of his front teeth on that day. He didn't use his hand. In the midst of battle, being killed by the kuffar of the Quraysh, this man has no concern for himself, nor his adab. His adab is intrinsic. His adab isn't something he learnt in a class and said, what will my notes say? His adab immediately infers that he doesn't touch the helmet with his hands, that he removes it with his own mouth. He lost all of his front teeth. They say after Uhud, every time he smiled, we will see no teeth and remember that he was the man who removed the helmet of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ from his face with his own teeth, Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah. This is the state in the midst of war. You know Khalid ibn Walid? Khalid ibn Walid once was tying his helmet very tight on his head. And his friends are looking, the other soldiers are looking at him. They said, are you scared or something? Why are you tying your helmet so that you're going to get injured? You're Khalid ibn Walid. He said, La, it's nothing to do with that. He said, look, he said, I've got some of the hair of the Prophet ﷺ in my helmet. And I fear that if it drops, he said, the kuffar will take this hair. And said, for that reason, I tie it so it doesn't fall off. And this is his love. We're going to talk about some of the other stories also. So this was Urwa ibn Mas'ud, al-Thaqafi, explaining the great status of the Messenger of Allah with his companions. Now, we move on to his hair, the hair of the Prophet ﷺ, this talal, these great things that remain, the relics that remain. The hair of the Prophet ﷺ, somebody asked me, my opinion, this is my opinion, you don't have to take it or leave it. You know, with the mawlids now that we have, every mawlid has a ziyarah. I'm not really for that. I don't know if I just said this before in this class. People have lost the value of the Prophet ﷺ. You know, showing the hair of the Prophet ﷺ should be the Prophet ﷺ said, Zur ghibban tazdadu hubban. Visiting frequently, love will increase. I think they should take it on one day for everybody to see per city. And that's it. One day. Because people get used to seeing the hair and they lose adab for the relationship to the relics of the Prophet ﷺ. But also silly things. Me myself, even, the last time I saw the hair of the Prophet ﷺ in a gathering, maybe some years ago, I make it specific that if it's going to be seen, it has to be a specific time, specific waiting period. If you're going to see the hair of the Prophet ﷺ, you want to see the Prophet ﷺ that night. That's what should be the intention of people. You see the hair of the Messenger of God, it should make you see the Messenger of God in your dream. That should be the connection to his relics. Now the hair of the Prophet ﷺ, let's talk about it. He, in one narration, لما حلق رأسه كان أبو طلحة أول من أخذ من شعره. On Hajj, he cut his hair, and Abu Talha took the first piece of hair. By one narration, he gave his hair to one Sahabi, and he said, spread it out amongst the people. Give it to all different people to keep the hair. And this is incredible because he knows, of course, but the great importance of keeping just the hair of the Prophet ﷺ. This is just a part of his body that will save people from the questioning of the grave, which will ease it for them. So he apportioned it amongst the people. In one narration, Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu states, left as a bequest that he be buried with not only the hair of the Prophet ﷺ, but buried whatever goods he had with him. He approached one day Ka'b ibn Zuhayr. Ka'b ibn Zuhair has what of the Prophet ﷺ? He has his jubbah. So Muawiyah said to him, look, you know you got the jubbah of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, how much money do you want for it? You know, Ka'b looked at him. He said, if you could get all the money of the world together, but God, I wouldn't give you this. He said, you're not getting this. Like never. Like never. But unfortunately, after Ka'b passed away, it was actually sold to somebody. Guess how much they paid for it? 25,000 dirhams. Do you know how much that is? You're talking about in the multi-millions here. They paid for it. Now, I mean, you would sell probably most of the family off to buy something like that. And then the muluk, the khulafa used to wear it after that. But when the Tartars invaded, it was lost. That particular jubbah of Ka'b was lost. So the jubbah we have in Topkapi is not Ka'b's. Ka'b's, that particular was lost when the Tartars invaded, which is, I mean, it's just the way it is. But Ka'b's, it was preserved all the way up until then. The leaders would wear that particular. And what the Ottomans took in was another jubbah of the Messenger of God, alayhi salatu wasalam. One of the companions, in fact, Anas ibn Malik states that more beloved to me عندي شعرات منه وأحب إلي من الدنيا وما فيها. One of the hairs of the Messenger of God is more important to me than all of the world and what it contains. I want to now talk about the sandals of the Prophet ﷺ, which is a very, very important topic. No, I'm not. Yeah. Now, this is really incredible. You know, the Sahaba, they had titles, and their titles were based on what relationship they had with the things that are connected to the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. So, in one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, "Where is Hamilun Na'alayn?" He says, "Where is the one who carries the na'al?" Who is that? You know who carries the sandals? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Let me tell you exactly how he carried it. They say Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, the Prophet ﷺ would sit down, he would kneel, take the sandals of the Prophet ﷺ, close them like that, put them under his armpit and stand next to him. Then when he left, he would sit down, put each one on, and the Prophet ﷺ would get up. That was just his job. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and he would put them under his armpit right here. Another person that carried them was Abdullah ibn Abbas. Another one that would carry them was Anas ibn Malik. These three are very special. But Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is incredibly special. Now, there is not only Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, there is Sahibu Siwak, who is also Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He also would carry the Siwak of the Prophet ﷺ. So his job was to carry the Na'al and the Siwak. He also carried the Wisada of the Prophet ﷺ, which is the pillow that the Prophet ﷺ would lean on. He would carry the Wisada. He would also carry sometimes the Jubbah of the Prophet ﷺ. He would also carry Sahibul Asa, the walking stick of the Messenger of God, which is, you know, you watch Lord of the Rings and you see Gandalf with, that's just, some fictitious. There's only one walking stick that is the supreme walking stick. And it's not even Asa Musa. Asa Musa is not the supreme walking stick. Asa Musa is a great walking stick. But the supreme walking stick is the walking stick of the Messenger of God. That he turns it like this and it becomes a flashlight, torch in the nighttime. Literally in the hadith. They couldn't see. He turned it, pointed it, and they could see everything. Literally, it turns into different things. You know, you're talking about, that's because he touched the hand of the Messenger of God, just because of that. Now, it's not just he's walking, that's his walking stick. In Badr, one of the Sahaba is standing in front of him, his name is Ukasha. He looks at Ukasha and Ukasha's got nothing. Ukasha's just going to go in there, no weapons. He's going to go in there and just wrestle people to the floor. This man has no weaponry. He's looking at him, the Prophet ﷺ, and he's thinking, Ukasha now is going to go into battle. Ukasha doesn't have slingshot. Ukasha doesn't have a sword, no camel, no horse, no spear. But Ukasha is ready for war. You know how many Sahaba went to Badr with no weapons? They literally just ran in and to take down the Quraysh, kill them with their bare hands. One of them said, I ran to strike one of them. By God, his head was on the floor. Killing them on behalf of the Sahaba. And he said, one of them said, I saw one of the angels. By God, his hooves did not touch the floor. He was flying through the sky on his horse, attacking the Quraysh. So the Prophet ﷺ looks, gets a stick, wooden stick. He puts it in the hand of Ukasha. Ukasha lifts it and looks at it, and there's no stick anymore. It was a sword, gleaming metal sword. And Ukasha said, I fought with that in that battle and thereafter, and they named it Al-Aun, the supreme aid. Al-Aun was his sword from wood. Why did it turn into this great sword? Because of the hand of the Messenger of God. Just touched it and it turned into, or Sayyidina Ali, when he hurts his eye, or one of the other Sahaba, when his eye literally comes out, Qatada, I think, and the Prophet lifts it and pushes it back in the socket, he wipes it. He said, is it good? He said, Ya Rasulullah, I can see better than the other one there. I mean, it's penetrating. Literally, that's all he would do. What's the problem? He would just touch it and it would remove all pains from them. But this is the asa, the supreme walking stick of the Messenger of God, alayhi salatu wasalam, carried by who? Carried by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. You see? Now the difference is, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud would carry them and they would know him, he was Hamil Na'alain. But also Abdullah ibn Abbas. Abdullah ibn Abbas had won over on Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Abdullah ibn Abbas al-Bayta, he's from the family, and he was young, and he actually would go into the house, carry everything, walk into the house, check it all out. It's all good. The Prophet saw some waiting. He said, Ya Rasulullah, it's all ready for you. You can go in. And he would literally be, if you looked, because he was only young, people would say, look, he would have, from behind, you could see the Messenger of God. But no, the Messenger of God would give him all of his clothes to wear and carry for him. So these were the carriers of the siwak and siwad and all of these other things. Now we move on to, there's a story, I think I mentioned it before, but I'll do it again. When Amir al-Mu'mineen Muhammad al-Mahdi, one of the leaders of the believers, he received a guest, and the guest, إِنَّهُ دَخَلَ عَلَيْهِ رَجُلٌ يَوْمًا وَمَعْهُ نَعْلٌ. A man came in with a sandal. And the man came in with his sandal and he said, هذا نعل رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام قد أهديتها لك. He said, I gift it to you. They say, the story reads, he said, فقال هاتيها فناوله إياه. He took it from him. فقبلها وضعها على عينيه. He kissed it and he put it on his eyes. وأمر له بعشرات آلاف درهم. آلاف درهم. He rewarded him for it 10,000 dirhams. فلما انصرف الرجل, when the man left the place, قال المهدي والله, said إني لا أعلم أن رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام لم يرى هذه النعل. Said, by God, I know the Messenger of God has not even ever seen this sandal. فضلا عن أن يلبسها. He's never seen it, leave alone he actually wore it. So all these people around him looked at him. They said, why did you give the man 10,000 dirhams for sandals that are not the sandals of the Messenger of God? He said, by God, if I refused it, he would have told everybody that I refused the sandals of the Prophet ﷺ. And for that I did it, for that reason, so that people don't think that Amir al-Mu'mineen refuses the sandals. What do people know if they're real or not? Refuses the sandals of the Messenger of God. This is the level of love of Umara, even of the leaders in their love for the Prophet ﷺ's relics. Now we move on to the end and to look at the preservation of the great things that the Messenger of Allah left behind and how the Salaf preserve them. Now here, what I want to talk about is, and finish with here on this particular topic, is what relics really means. What relics really mean. What remains of those signs, as Majnun says about Layla when he was brushing against the walls, and he says it's not the walls that I for the sake of the walls, but it's the one who resided once within these walls of Layla. And for us, it's anything that bears any association to the Prophet ﷺ. But this particular Shaykh, this book that I'm quoting from by Shaykh Muhammad Tahir bin Abdul Qadir al-Kurdi. I'm translating, I should finish it soon. It's about the relics of the Prophet ﷺ. He mentions something very important. He says that relics truly, athar, are not these things. He says relics are people. Relics are people. He said the relics of the Messenger of God are the people who love him. He said because if the people go, he said there'll be nobody left to know how to love the relics. He said the relics are the people who love the Prophet ﷺ. And I want to talk about that now. And the question would be to all of us, how much do we love the Messenger of God ﷺ? So that would be the essential question. The essential question. I mentioned the story of Abdullah bin Umar, or the story of Bilal. I think we talked last time about real love, about the story of Bilal. My question is, in one day, how much do we show love, or how much love do we show to the Messenger of God? You know, they said about Abu Bakr al-Shibli, they said he was, Abu Bakr al-Shibli, they said he was a madman. He was in Baghdad. Shibli, you've heard of Shibli, yeah? They said he was mad. And that all of the ulama kind of stayed away from him. And one of the great ulama one day, in front of everybody, stood up and he kissed him on his head. And they censured him for it. They said, Ya Shaykh, if you are going to give respect to these types of people, what are people going to say about you? He said, I don't kiss him because I today spontaneously thought I'd kiss him. He said, by God, I saw the Messenger of Allah in my dream yesterday. And he was kissing Shibli on his head. All I do is repeat what he did. One of the ulama, they say he passed away. Sheikh Imam Uqlishi mentions all of this in his 40 hadith on salawat. He said, they say he passed away, one of the ulama, and he's in the court of Allah Jalla wa'ala. And he says to Allah, Allah says, you know, you are a man who would say this, and you do very little. Huh? Very little. What did you do? What good deeds do you have? Just all talk. Huh? So, Ya Allah, absolutely true. I had a lot of good, mashallah, but not very good, actual action. And Allah said, why should I have mercy on you? He said, Allah, didn't I, after I started my session, always send salawat on the Messenger of God? He said, didn't I do that at least? God, isn't that enough for me? And they say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave him for it. Imam Sharaf came in the dream of one of his students. And he said, I saw him, and he was in Jannah, walking, and they were throwing confetti on him. Roses al-Jannah. And they draped him in a green cloth. Green is very important to our tradition. Green, always green. Always green. DI would be very happy today. So, his student said, Ya Imam, what did you do that was so special that you received this? He said, in my book, Kitab al-Umm, I wrote one salawat, very special salawat on the Prophet ﷺ. For this, God granted me everything. In that book, Imam Uqlishi mentions stories of the Salihin and how they loved the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. When the Sahabi sat with the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, Allah, he said, I dedicate to you me. Now look at us and look at him. He specifically said, I dedicate to you. And my question to myself and everybody, what have we dedicated to the Messenger of God? So I dedicate to you that after I finish my prayer, I'll give you some of my dua. The Prophet ﷺ said, if that's what you want to do, okay. He said, I felt some displeasure in the Messenger of God. I felt that he wasn't content. He said, Ya Rasulullah, okay, I'll give you half of what dua I'm going to make. I'll give it for you, half of it. He said, okay, if you want to do it then, mashallah, carry on, do that. He said, I felt displeasure in the Messenger of God. He said, I'll give you 3/4 of my dua. He said, in shi'ta, if you want to do it, do it. He said, I knew I couldn't please the Messenger of God. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I won't make any dua for myself, nothing. He said, I'll give it all for you. He said, and this will be sufficient, the Messenger of God said, for this world and what you do and what will be in the hereafter. And this is a man who's dedicated his dua. I mean, we make dua, people getting married, they say, what dua can we read? What dua can we read? We want to get married. This man's got no dua for marriage anymore. He's got no dua for pious children. He's got no dua left for Allah, nothing. All he's got is Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. That's his absolute dua that he has to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has no dua left. And the Messenger of God will be right next to, or he would be right next to the Messenger of God on the day of judgment. You know, Busayri, we're going to get to some of the other lines. Busayri is in this chapter, is the absolute mudhakkir, reminder of how to love the Prophet ﷺ. And in this day and age of material goods, and I want to remind all of us that we could walk out of this door, somebody could be hit by a car and they'd be dead. You know, you know, and we'll dedicate the barakah of this gathering to my beloved friend Altaf and his brother Khalid. His father passed away yesterday. Allah yarhamu. Who I've known since a little baby, maybe it's his father. And people will die just like that. Some of you in this room will probably be dead within the year, or 2 years, or 3 years. I swear to you, see, for me it's more real. Other people study with me that have died, and somebody's come to me and they're not in the class and they've passed away. You know, one of my closest people, my own class when I studied, in our class, there were 6 of us. He came to me, this was 10 years ago now, and he said to me, where are we in the class? And I told him, and he had been away for a month or so, and he said, I'm going to Umrah, I'll come back, we'll carry on. Went to Umrah, had a car accident, God took him. You know, it's people, God will take all of us. My question is, when we enter that state of darkness in the grave, what will we have to offer in relation to the Messenger of God, alayhi salatu wasalam? I vividly remember a brother who was dying about 5-6 years ago, and he was really, really scared. This brother was. He was dying of cancer, and he had a reformation in his life. And a few days before he died, I heard that his state completely changed. He wasn't really worried about dying, and they asked him why. This is in Birmingham, you know, it's not Baghdad in 6th century. And he said, I had a dream, and the Messenger of God came in my dream and said, do not worry for what will happen in the grave. He said, I will hold your hand in your grave. Now, how many people have had that vision of the Messenger of God? That vision where the Messenger of God offers to save you in whatever state you will be. In contrast to that, the dunya is of no importance. The dunya that we've been engrossed in, the cyber world, we're engrossed in, all of us. What's left of the relationship with the Messenger of God? And life now, somebody asked me last week, he said to me, I was in London, said, Maulana, what have you been up to this week? I said, by God, I don't know what happened to last week, but all I know is I'm here now, and that's about it. And before we reach the age of 50, 60, I mean, what will be left of our relationship with the Messenger of God? I think personally, we are absolute rarity in this age now. And I'm going to probably finish with this, and this is a promise to you. The people who gather for the Messenger of God are disappearing. And this is the command of Allah Jalla wa'ala. This is the way that it had to happen. If you can find people whose lives depend on the Messenger of God, they are the last remaining people on this earth. And I remember Mullah Hashim Birgithi last lesson, I mentioned some of the secrets that he unveiled to me of himself. A man engrossed in the Masjid. I remember till this day, Shaykh Ahmad Habbal, when I used to sit with him, he would, something distinct that I remember about him. You know, a man of reading Quran, he would read Quran. Anybody sit with Shaykh Ahmad Habbal here? Anybody sit with him? He would do something really special. Always like would wait for it. He had a very big Quran. Because he's old, he couldn't, 100 years old. By God, whenever he got to the name of the Prophet, he would stop. He would stop. And this is exactly what he would say. He would get to the name. He would get to the name, put his finger over the name, and he would say, Ya Habibi, Ya Muhammad. And he would, over his body, and he would carry on. Every single place that I still distinctly remember, I would wait, and then he would do it. Over his body, and then he would carry on. Imagine how many times, and he would still finish Quran every 7 days. A man who is engrossed in the presence of the Messenger, with the presence of the Messenger of God. This is a man and of our century, of our era, who literally gave up his life in the remembrance of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. Us sitting here looks difficult for us in the sense of we got no awliya here. We don't know who awliya are, but there's no Shaykh Ahmad Habbal if you're feeling a bit depressed. to go and sit with Mullah Hashim or Sidi Hamza. Nobody you can go to it, or you go there. Literally, I swear by Allah, that if anything was wrong with you, you felt little down, you sat with Shaykh Ahmed Habal, you came out, you're absolutely fine. People just go there, sit 10 minutes, khalas, walk out of the room. They are not those people anymore amongst the God has taken them within 10 years, has taken almost most of them that I know their names anyway, in wait of the Mahdi or his appearance. Now, in absence of that, what do we have? In absence of that, what's left for us? In absence of that, what's left for us is, like that Shaykh said, he said, the absence of that is just to remember the Messenger of God. That's all that's left for us to remember. How much do we know about him? You know, it's appalling that us as Muslims, we don't know anything about the Prophet ﷺ, nothing. We don't even know the names of his grandparents, his great-grandparents. We don't know his own names, the names of the Messenger of God. The laqab, Abdullah, of the Messenger of God, the kunya, Abul Qasim. Who knows the names of? People say Sahaba. If Sahaba to one side, who knows about the Messenger of God? Something for myself, or also for myself also. What do we know about the Messenger of God? What do we know? If you had to describe him now, كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ, as if you see him, could you really describe him? Describe him to such a degree that literally you could see a projected image in front of you, and you wouldn't need to remember the Shama'il. You can literally say, there was a man tabi'i. He went to Abdullah ibn Abbas. He said, I know what the Messenger of God looks like. He said, describe him for me. So this man is a tabi'i. He said, the Messenger of God has an aquiline nose. The Messenger of God has a beard that reaches to his heart. This beard. It's the only hadith that mentions the length of the beard of the Prophet ﷺ, only narration, ever. You would never get any other narration. His beard is up to his heart. His forehead is broad. His skin is azhar, is white, light, but a slight tint of pink in his skin. He has long eyelashes. He has a round face. He begins to describe, he had the Prophet ﷺ had 3 lengths of hair, different periods. Abdullah ibn Abbas is looking at this man. He said, by God, if you had seen him with your own eyes, you could not have described him any better. This man saw him in his dream. This man saw him in his dream. This man was overcome by wanting to see the Messenger of God, who in the battle of in Fatu Makkah, does anybody know what his hair was like in Fatu Makkah? 4 locks it was in. The 4 locks of the Messenger of God. His hair was in 4 locks in Makkah. And who was the other person whose hair was in 4 locks? Only has to be one. Abu Bakr's hair was in 4 locks. Also, looking at the Messenger of God's hair, Abu Bakr thought, if the Messenger of God's going to do it, then we have to also obey that command in 4 locks. How did that look? When his hair was just below his earlobes, how did it look? When it's between his earlobes and the top of his shoulder, how did it look? When it reached just touching his shoulder, how did it look? I mean, these are things, his white hair in the front of his head, but when he would add oil to his hair, you couldn't see. One thing which is incredible about this Shama'il, this is one of the special qualities of the Prophet ﷺ. If you don't know it, this is the quality that you need to know. The Messenger of God does not age. He's ageless. The Messenger of God, alayhi salatu wasalam, is ageless. Ageless. When he married Aisha, the Prophet ﷺ wasn't, when they say he was 50 years old, the Messenger of God looked as an 18, 19-year-old youth would look. His face never aged. The only reason he had those white hairs was because of when the Quran was revealed, he's worried for the Ummah when those surahs were revealed, his hair became white, that would disappear when he applied oil to it. The Messenger of God looked ageless. He never aged. That's why in Al-Jannah, he was ageless in the dunya. Why does he look exactly the same in Al-Jannah as people saw him? As he was when he was 60, 55, 45, exactly the same he looked. His body did not age. His face did not age. He reached the level of perfection. And after perfection, what is he going to receive? And there is no decline from the level of perfection of the Messenger of God. It just stayed absolute for the Messenger of God that he looked like that. We see him as he was, as he left, as he lived, we see him in exactly the same form when we see him in our dreams, if we see him truly, up until his last days in our dunya. You will never see the Sahaba saying he aged. You won't see them saying that. Ibrahim Bajuri says they never even call him a man. La yaliqu bis Sahaba. He said they never, it wouldn't befit them to call him a man. When Anas ibn Malik said Rajul Marbu'a, he was Rajul that was Marbu'a, medium heighted. He said he didn't mean that, he meant Rujul al-Sha'r. His hair was slightly curly at the back. I mean, this was the intense love of these people for the Messenger of God. And in this day and age, we hope that we can't individually do things, but at least collectively we can try to remember the Messenger of God. We shouldn't get ourselves, and be clear about this. There are some people that say we need to aggressively attack those people constantly that we feel that may not represent the Prophet in the correct manner. I tell you, I ain't got time for those people. I mean, I haven't got enough life. There are people already doing that to worry about stupid people on the internet making stupid videos about topics that they have no understanding and no ilm over. They're just their abyss in Jahannam is just getting bigger and bigger. This guy making a video on the internet, people are phoning me, do you think we should reply? I wouldn't want to reply to a person like that. If we reply to every hakir on the internet who makes the video, these people have no right to utter the name of the Prophet ﷺ. They can cry as much as they want. Hindus cry as well. I mean, sort of Christians. We have no time for these people. We have only time for the Messenger of God ﷺ. If they want some of this light that was given by our teachers, some of this light is absolutely free. You know, I pity people that don't come to gatherings like Burda, that don't come to gatherings with Dalail al-Khairat. Look how much they've lost because of their misunderstanding of the Messenger of God. Look what these people have lost. They've lost every connection to the Messenger of God. It doesn't matter how many Seerah conferences you have lost the Messenger of God. Suhkan, suhkan. Remove them from me, for they left my way, he says on the Day of Judgment. So our iltimas is, our dua is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we meet every month to try to build. If this same building, there's something wrong with me obviously, but at least let Busayri build our love build that picture for 2.5 chapters. Build that picture, build that picture, build that picture, build that picture until he states وَكَيْفَ تَدْعُو إِلَى الدُّنْيَا ضَرُورَةُ مَنْ لَوْلَاهُ لَمْ تُخْرَجِ الدُّنْيا مِنَ الْعَدَمِ. And then he says Muhammadun, only once ever mentioned in the Burda his name, سيد القونين والثقلين والفريقين من عرب ومن عجم. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر لي ولكم وأتوب إليه. السلام عليكم.